Basically what happens here is with our programs. In the first program, the first unit we opened up where there's a form, this is the place where we're going to do all our user interface things. So we're going to put components here, we're going to ask for input, we're going to display outputs. This unit 1 has to do everything with the UI, the user interface we're doing here. And this unit 2, it doesn't even have a GUI. So this one's got nothing to do with the interface part. This will just, it's like for calculation purposes. So what's going to happen on this side, we're going to ask the user to maybe give us some values for the car, the mileage and stuff. And then we're going to send this information from this unit to this unit, and the unit will receive it here. So these ones are sort of, I want to say, like the containers at a loading dock. It's just temporary containers. The stuff is just in that container for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those values that's in those containers that belongs to the storage yard, and we're just going to give it to the company itself, to the company cars. Maybe put it inside each of the company's boxes. And now the company can keep it forever. So the company will keep them and use them in their boxes. But these ones were just the storage yard's containers. So these attributes are just temporary storage. The values we get from the GUI will be sent to them. They will just transfer the information to the attributes, so that for the rest of the program we're going to use the attributes themselves. So they're just sort of like the transferring variables, if you can see it like that. They are just there to receive the values from the unit 1 and to assign it to the attributes, and their job is done. That's the only thing they're going to do. Then we forget about them and we're only going to use the attributes from now on throughout the program. Alright, so that is our parameters. Now our next set, so this is our first, I want to say, like common type of method, which is called a constructor, which is there to create the object. But our attributes are encapsulated. That means this unit cannot see what is the mileage, color, operational or brand of this object. They cannot see the values. But sometimes you do want to know what is the mileage on the car. That's something you would want to know, but now because it's encapsulated, you can't actually see the value. So what we can get is another type of method, which we call an accessor. Okay, and as the word says, it gives us access. It's an accessor, so it will give us access to the attributes. Another word that some textbooks and some people like to use is it's called getters, because we're going to get the value from our attributes. Now, your question paper will tell you which getters you want. Most of the time you won't create accessors for all of your attributes, because that will sort of defeat the object. Most of the time you'll have for like 1 or 2 of them, you'll create accessors. So let's create one for the mileage. Let's say we want to find out, we want to give the other unit the possibility to see what is the mileage of this car. Now our first word we have to look at is, except if it's a constructor, is we have to look either function or procedure. Now in this case an accessor is not a constructor, so that's out. So we have to think a function or procedure. Now, okay, so for an accessor we will create a function, because we want to know the answer. If we want to know what is the mileage, it actually needs to tell us what that mileage is. So it's going to be a function. The second word is the method name. Now for a function, that's also why it's called, for an accessor, that's why it's called a getter, is your accessor name normally starts with a get, and then whichever attribute you want to get. So we want to get mileage. So that's our second word. Our third word could be parameters. Now in this case, what we have to remember with these parameters, our attributes are global variables. So the values of these four things is known throughout the program. So if you want their values, you don't need a parameter for it because we already know it. So like in this case, when we ask what is the mileage, we can see what the mileage is because it's a global variable. So we don't need parameters. If I wanted to know what is the color, I can see it there, so I don't need parameters. If I wanted to know what is the sales price of this car, then we'll most probably need parameters because we can't calculate the price from any of these things. Alright, so in this case, for this function, and normally our accessors, most of the time, they do not have parameters because nothing else is required. We're just returning what we already know. So we're just returning the mileage, and we already know the mileage because it's a global variable. So no parameters, we just leave the brackets out. And then the fourth thing, only for functions, we've got a function, we have to say the return type. So when we return mileage, what data type will that be?
Float.
Say again?
A float or a double in this instance.
Yes, float or double. Alright, if you've just got the one accessor, then you press Ctrl Shift C. It creates this for you. And then for an accessor or for a function, whenever you've got a function, that means you sort of get a variable called result. So you're just going to say result gets the value of, and whatever you give to result will be sent back. So in this case, it's the mileage attribute. So you get like a result variable, and whatever you give to that will be sent back. So now, if unit 1 calls the method getMileage, getMileage will return the mileage variable, which is this one. So even though mileage variable is private and it's encapsulated, meaning the value is hidden, because of this method, it allows us to see what the mileage of the car is. Alright, then just like we did that, we can just do another one just for exercise sake. So let's say we want the brand as well. Because we want to know what the brand is, obviously that will be a function. It's a getter because we want to access, so we're going to call it getBrand. And that will return a string for us. We won't have any parameters because we know what the brand is. We press Ctrl Shift C, creates this area for us. Because it's a function, we've got a result. What do we want to give to result? We want to give the brand variable. Alright, and that's how accessors work. Now, however, accessors will just tell us what those values are. But you do get some times where we might want to change, like operational. Currently the car is operational or not. Something might happen to it that would change that state. So we might want to change one of these attributes. Now at this stage they are still private, encapsulated, so we cannot see or change them. But thanks to an accessor we can see what they are. And now, thanks to another type of method, which we called a mutator. So mutator, mutation, is there to change something. So the other name for that one is also called a setter. And this one is here to change a value of our attributes. Now for this one, if I ask you to change the operational value from true to false, are you going to return anything to me? I'm basically asking, our first word will either be constructor, and it's not a constructor. So now we have to choose between function or procedure. Will it be a function or a procedure? If I want, yes, well done. Because in this case, we just want to change it to non-operational. We just want to make it false. So you don't need to tell me anything, or the program doesn't need to tell me anything. They must just go do it. They must just change it to false. So this will be a procedure. And these ones, they work the same way, but it's a setter. So it starts with set, and then whichever property we're changing. So set operational. Now, in this specific case that I'm telling you now, my question to you was just change it so that the operation is false. We just want to make it false. So in this case, you don't need to know anything either. So this one will not have parameters. So there will not be parameters because you know you're going to make it false. So you don't need any other information. And it's not a function. So that means we're just done. Then you say Control-Shift-C. Gives you this option. And now you just go do. So it's just supposed to take our operational must just become false. And that's literally all you do. Now we could also maybe change the color. Maybe it's like a painting shop and we want to change the color of the car. So again, we just want to do something. So it's a procedure. We want to set the color. But now in this case, the user will tell us which color it should be, because we don't know what color to change it to. So now we're going to receive. We need to receive the new color. So that means parameter. And we're going to need to receive the new color. And what data type will new color be? String. The fourth thing is only for functions. This is a procedure, so there's nothing there. Then we Control-Shift-C. And with this one now, our attribute, which is color, must become the new color. So we're just going to again give our parameter to the attribute so that we can change the attribute. Alright, so these are three common ones. Our constructor, our accessor, our mutator, and then the last one we get is they call it toString. Now the toString is just for display purposes. The toString is not actually a specific type of method, but they just always have it. They always call it toString, and the purpose of this is just to display easier, because you're gonna have a double and a boolean and a string all mixed up, and maybe you want to display them always in a nice format. So maybe we want the mileage and then a tab, then the color, and then underneath that operational and a tab, and then the brand. So the toString will help us to just put all of this together in a nice way to display it. Because remember, also in this stage, we've only got accessors. We've only got access to the mileage and brand. So we don't know the color and we don't know the operation. But maybe we want, when we want like a report on everything, we want to see that as well. And that's where the toString comes with. So the toString will just combine all of these for us and make all of them one string and add some formatting for us. Alright, so when we do this one, do you think it will be a function or a procedure?
C.
Alright, so with this one, this sort of question, because remember now the other program will say, I need to know what is the information so that I can display it. So that means function. Because this unit needs to now send the information out so that the other one can display it. So it needs to be a function because it needs to return the answer. It needs to return all that values for them. For the toString, it's just always called toString. Most of the time we don't need additional information because we're just going to display the attributes. So that means no parameters. And then the fourth piece for functions, this is a function, the return type. So what data type do you think it's going to return? String, hopefully. Then we go Control-Shift-C, gives us this thing. And now, depending on the question, you just have to make a string that's got this formatting. Now we've got the result variable. You can go and create another variable, like display. Put everything in this first, and then at the end just give result gets the value of this. You can do that as well. But in our case, we've just got the 4 attributes, so it's not too serious. So we can literally just go, the first one we said we wanted mileage and then color next to each other. So the mileage, and then we wanted the tab, and then we wanted the color. But then you have to remember, oh, mileage is actually double. So how do I make this double a string? Float to string. So that will mileage is string now plus the color. Then we said we wanted to go to a new line. Underneath that we said we want the operational. And we said we wanted the hash again. And then we wanted the last thing, the brand. Okay, operational is boolean. So what can we do with that one? Full to string. Alright, so these are the generic ones. So each of your question papers, they might ask you to create some attributes, then you do that. A lot of times they give you that already. They might ask you to create one of the constructors. Sometimes they already give that. They might ask you to do 1 or 2 or 3 accessors, 1 or 2 or 3 mutators. Normally they do ask you for the toString as well. So these are the generic ones. And then there will always be some others, like 2 or 3 other ones, which we can call auxiliary methods. Or the other name for this is user defined. Now, these methods are just like random other methods that applies to the program. So if we had something like a price there, you could have a method here that works out the tax or the cost price or the markup percentage or something like that. If it was for like a person, you could have one that creates like a code for him. Well, we can actually do one. We can actually create a code one here. So we could have a question where they ask us generate a code for the car. Use the first letter of color. plus last letter of brand plus a 3-digit random number. So let's say they asked us that. They can ask you something like this, where they can ask you, write a method that creates a code for the car, use the first letter of the color, the last letter of the brand, and a 3-digit number. So let's say they asked that. Alright, so your first question you're going to ask yourself, is it a constructor? No, it's not. So we need to decide, is it a function or a procedure? So with the next few steps, I'm not going to do it, you have to guide me through this. So will this thing, will it return an answer or not? What do you think?
It's a function, it will return the answer.
Yes, because obviously we're generating a code. If we're not returning, then why did we do it? So we need to return the code for that, so that we can actually show it to the person. So it's a function. Oh, normally in this they'll tell you, call it called gen code. So they'll tell you what to call the thing. So we're going to create a function. They said we must call it gen code. Now your third step is parameters. Do we need any additional information? So we need the first letter of the color. Do we know what the color is? Yes, we do. We need the last letter of the brand. Do we know what the brand is? Yes, we do. And we need a 3-digit random number. So that's the pieces you need. Do you need any additional information? And then our answer is no, because we know what the color is, we know what the brand is, and for a random number you don't need to know anything, because we're just going to do a random number. So we don't need to ask the user for anything, we can do this by ourselves. But now because it's a function, the fourth one comes in, the return type. So what will the return type of this one be, do you think?
String.
Yes, well done. Because of these alphabet letters, this must be a string. So we do that. After we created that, what do we click?
Control Shift C.
Control Shift C. Alright. Now for this one, for the code, we want to generate the code. So let's create a variable. We'll just say, let's call it code. It's going to be a string. Alright, so they said the first thing we want to do is use the first letter of the color. So how do I get the first letter of the color? Jock, wat sê jy?
Copy.
Copy could work, okay. Let's go the copy route. There's an easier way, but let's do copy. Kosi, carry on for us.
I believe it would be C, because C is what we currently have as the color.
No, remember C is just a local variable, so it disappeared. After this end, C doesn't exist anymore. But what we do have, we've got color. Our global variables, our attributes we can use. So it's just called color. So we want to copy out of color. Alright. Then starting where?
1.
And for how many characters?
1.
Okay, so there's our first thing in. What's the other option we could have done to get the first character?
The color, then square bracket 1, close
Yes.
square bracket.
Well done. So we could have just said color and then in square brackets the 1. That would have given us the first character from color. But this is also fine, same thing. Okay, so we've got the first letter now. Now they want us to get the last letter of the brand. So our code must become whatever the code was plus. So we've got the first one. But now, Stefan, maybe you can guide us a bit. How can we get now the last character from the brand?
From the brand. Well, we need to get the length of the brand variable.
Okay, so you want a length integer. Alright, how would you do that?
Then we use the copy function.
No, okay, how do we get the length? Tell us.
Length. Well, length. Then in brackets, the brand variable.
Yeah. Alright, then what will we do?
Let me think. Okay, then we use the copy function.
Okay,
The position we got, well, the length variable.
okay, what do we put
No,
first?
the brand variable.
Yes, out of what first? So we want to copy out of brand.
The length variable,
Yeah, then starting position, which is len,
and then 1.
and then 1. Alright, so now we've got the first character, we put it in code, then we say take code, keep what's in there, and add that now. Now we want a 3-digit code. Jock, can you guide us with that one? If I want a 3-digit random number.
Yeah, just random whatever variable, and just have to start the randomize there.
Okay. Randomize, yeah.
Random, and then I can't remember if it was. I think it's. Yeah, I can't remember if it was highest first, lowest.
Yes, it's highest minus lowest plus 1. Okay, so what is the highest value?
If you want it to be a 3-digit code, it would be 999,
Yeah,
and then the lowest would be 100
yes, and then outside?
plus 1. Oh, plus lowest, sorry.
Plus?
Lowest, I believe.
Yes, so it's 100 again. Yeah, well done. Alright, now we've got that. So our code must be whatever the code was. But then we just want to add our random number now. But it's an integer. So just into string. Our ran. And now our code is complete. So what do we do right at the end? So remember, functions got the result variable. So whenever you're done, you give your final answer to result. So in here we'll just go result gets the value of code. So that will now send the code back to the program so that the program can display it for the user. Alright, now we're done with this side of the program. So now we want to go to the other side.